Hello and welcome back to the Ecuador Insider Podcast. Jesse, Carl, and Brandon coming to you. We're going to look a little dark today. We made the decision that the sky and the mountains were more important than our faces. You guys have seen enough of us over the years, but thanks for tuning in. We're going to chat a little bit about all kinds of things today. Talk a little bit about real estate in Ecuador, our philosophy, how we go about that, how we can help you go about that, some of the ins and outs of those processes. And give some general updates and touch on a few things. So thank you for tuning in. We should start. There are some spots left for our July 21st. Thank you. Our July 21st Vilcabamba lifestyle retreat. This has been what, our fifth now, I believe, coming up. It has been absolute blast. We really pack a lot into these 9 days, provide tremendous value. You're here at Hosteria Vilcabamba, a beautiful spot here in Vilcabamba. It's a really great way to spend 9 days. It's an all-inclusive retreat. You get expert panels and presentations on every topic you could possibly be interested in terms of thinking about Ecuador as a place to relocate to or do business in. You eat at all the restaurants, immerse in the community, see the areas, get a sense of the real estate market. And on and on. So a massage, downtime, so we'd love to see you there. We'll put the link in the description. Anything to add on that?
Yeah, it really is like Vilcabamba, Ecuador, Capstone Class 101. Everything you want to know about Ecuador in Vilcabamba, in this region, you're going to learn on this retreat. Again, all the expert panels, all the access to professionals and to us. It's really valuable if you're interested in learning about what life is like in Vilcabamba and how your life could look should you move here. You're going to get all the ammo you need to make a great decision in the Vilcabamba Lifestyle Retreat. So click the link below. And before we jump into the pod, if you're subscribed to the channel, thank you. Hit the bell icon to be notified about all future content. Give us a thumbs up on the video. And if for some reason you're not subscribed yet, go down there right now, pause the video, hit subscribe, come back, hit subscribe. Let's do this, man. Right?
You do that really well. You're like one of those guys on YouTube who does that well.
One of those guys.
That was really good. Okay, and also get excited about the health retreat. We are making a lot of progress in our planning on our first Vilcabamba health retreat. This is going to be an absolutely awesome 21-day retreat, also held at Vilcabamba, which is just an awesome space. Like, you just walk in there, you feel good. There's a pool, there's a spa, there's cabañas all over, a beautiful yoga shala, a beautiful conference room, very much set in the sort of rustic Ecuador vibe and style, I should say. Restaurant that overlooks the valley, walking trails everywhere. It's quiet. It's really an amazing spot. But set there, we're renting out the whole place for the health retreat. So we'll have the run of it. We're going to have, beautiful, healthy food, organic, healthy food catered by amazing chefs here in the valley. We're going to have access to incredible health practitioners that make their home here. So literally probably 20 modalities or something like that.
Internationally known professionals, like top of their class professionals that practice and practice medicine and healing internationally in Europe, in Canada, in the United States, and make their home here. It's pretty special, man. Pretty special.
Yeah, workshops, yoga and hikes and on and on. So it's going to be a really amazing 21 days. I think whether you have health issues that you're working on, or you're just looking to, improve your overall sort of baseline, how you feel, I think this is going to be an amazing opportunity. I'm really excited about it. The health practitioners are really excited about it. That's been awesome. The energy behind this thing is really beautiful. So keep an eye out for that. That's going to start, I believe, right around the 15th of October. We're just finalizing that date, and we'll start to have that stuff out soon. So, all right, cool. Let's jump right into it. We want to chat with you guys a little bit today about just our philosophy on doing business. I think for anybody really who's coming from a different country and you're thinking about moving to Latin America and you've got, probably, you've probably read all kinds of stuff or you've seen all kinds of stuff and you don't really know, what's true and what's not. and you don't speak the language, you don't understand the culture, you don't want to get ripped off, right? You don't want to, you don't want to get taken advantage of. You don't want to make a mistake where you buy something that isn't really yours, or some sort of title or some sort of logistical or paperwork issue. And so so just sort of thinking about some of those things as as a potential buyer, as someone potentially coming down here, those were the things that that gave us the impetus to launch the company, right? 10 years ago was solving for a lot of that, right? So we came down in 2013. At that time, properties were large in this part of the country. Properties were still largely sold through word of mouth. People would let the taxi drivers know, like what's for sale. And there were very few real estate agents or companies at all, even in Loja, in a big, decent sized city. There were very few sort of standardized processes at that time. Some of this has been improved a bit over the last 10 years in general. But at that time, like, very little was on the internet, very few standardized processes, really no real estate agents, certainly no scrupulous ones. In general, your sort of, sort of the level of professionalism or the level of fiduciary responsibility that a lot of professionals have down here can be a little bit less. There's also things that people here take for granted. They just kind of understand the way it works. But as a foreigner, you don't, right? So you're coming in and you're trying to figure all this out. And if you don't ask the right questions, things could slip under the rug, or not get addressed because you just don't know, that you're supposed to ask about X, Y, or Z. And so, when we came down and we spent a year looking for land, and we realized how unwieldy the process was, and we also realized that very few things are accessible unless you're in the town talking to people. So we kind of launched the real estate company to remedy that, and to help buyers and sellers have successful transactions that are smooth, that there is a standardized process for that, the checks and balances are in place, that the due diligence process is, executed properly, that we understand what we're buying, what someone's buying, how big it is, what the condition, what the status of the title is, are there any restrictions, what is the zoning, that we have a good process for giving deposits, holding escrow, going through the closing process, etc. So it's been an interesting journey over the last 10 years, running this business and selling real estate in Ecuador. It's a very different animal than selling real estate back home. Just to give you guys a little bit of color on that, right? There's really no escrow services in Ecuador. There's no title insurance in Ecuador. There's lawyers, and there's good ones, and we work with who we consider the best lawyers in the area. But even the best lawyers, same as back home, but can miss things, and there's you still have to sort of oversee that process a little bit. Researching the title here is a bit different, than it is back home. Again, mainly because there's no title company, so that due diligence is on you. There can be land use restrictions in various cases, either from the environmental ministry or others that have sort of zoning. Essentially, it's zoning that says what you can and can't do with the property. And so, we've created a system over time to really understand, when we take on a listing, all of those parameters, including the title, which is really important because there's various statuses of titles in this country, and really you need what's called una escritura pública for you to have what we would call like a simple deed or whatever we call it back home, but to have a deed, to have a clean title. That's really what you need. But there's other forms. You'll see derechos y acciones, which are basically that you own the rights to something, in this case, property. We'll see usufructo, which is a whole nother form of ownership. But there's restrictions when you have that form of ownership on property. So we're very careful about researching all that stuff, making sure that we're overseeing the process, because at the end of the day, it's our reputation on the line. We want to make sure that you guys are not in a bad situation having done business with us. That's really our number one goal when it comes to, that part of, that side of the business. So yeah, I talked a lot. I'm sure you guys have tons to add, but that's kind of the nuts and bolts anyway. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump into like how important it is for us just to be honest and transparent with all of our clients about just everything, right? So if we know that there's an issue, some type of, anything it is, or something that could potentially be an issue, we will let buyers and sellers know. If there's a property that could have a foundation issue or electrical, these types of things, all this information is revealed to everybody. So we, that's basically our motto, is just to be honest and transparent about everything. Sometimes, right, a sale could fall through if there's an issue with a property, and unscrupulous realtor might want to hide certain things. That's something that is definitely against our policies, and we just want to be honest and transparent with you guys about everything.
Yeah, and I don't want to minimize the point you're making, because it's one of the reasons I'm with Abundant Living now, is because of the integrity and the honesty and the doing the right thing all the time mindset, and putting the client first. Like, that's really important to me, and it's really important to everyone here that, with Abundant Living on the team. But I just wanted to ask you, Carl, what's a motto? You said it's our motto.
Our motto.
Hello,
Motto.
Oh, it's our motto. Oh, I got it.
Is that under the catalyst converter? Or?
The motto is a motorcycle, right?
Motto. Hello, motto.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. No, I just a little fun with our Canadian friend, our French-Canadian friend here.
Carl likes to remind us that English is actually not his first language.
Right.
I don't like reminding it, but when I do grammatical mistakes like that,
No, it's great.
I like to have a little leeway.
It is. Your mastery of language is impressive.
Well, thank
English,
you,
French, Spanish. Yeah. He is quite the language connoisseur. That is for sure.
No, yeah. I mean, I really, I second obviously everything you guys said, and there's at the end of the day, right? If our philosophy on doing business is that we don't want bad energy in our lives, right? Like, I certainly don't, right? I don't want, you can't help it. Some people are just not going to like you for whatever reason. They woke up on the wrong side of the bed that day or whatever. But in general, our philosophy is to make things right no matter what. It's not that we're infallible. It's not that we're, perfect at everything we do, but we're going to do everything in our power to not make mistakes. And then if there ever is an oversight, if there ever is anything that goes wrong, we're going to fix it. We're going to do everything in our power to fix it. I think in, the 10 years of the business, there's sort of 3 things that I can think of that were not handled the way I would like. One of them was no big deal at all. It was just a boundary issue that there was an error in the title that the lawyer didn't catch and we didn't catch, where there was they literally just wrote a number wrong. So that cost a couple $100 to fix. It wasn't our fault at all, but we paid for it. It was just something that the guy wasn't happy. So this was a local buyer. He was making noise. It really had nothing to do with us at all, but we were like, no problem. We'll send the engineer out there and we'll do the study and get it submitted and take care of the issue. So there was that. And then there was, one time we had an employee who basically robbed us. And we lost some money that was a client's deposit. We just refunded it. We took that money out of our company reserve, and we refunded the client immediately, because we didn't even. I don't even know if we told them. It had nothing to do with them. It was the money was in our hands. It was our responsibility. The fact that we got robbed is between us and the employee, right? So yeah, I mean, just a couple of examples of how we look at those things, right? We're at the end of the day, like, people that are coming down here, they're living here, they're in the community. We're gonna see them all the time. It would be very uncomfortable for all of us if there was a lot of pissed off people running around because we were screwing things up.
And that's important. That's a great point for everybody to understand. Vilcabamba and the surrounding areas, it's a really tight-knit, small community, and everybody talks. People are connected electronically on Facebook, Telegram groups, WhatsApp groups. There's all types of connection, and then people meet in town and there's meeting places and clubs and activities where everybody talks, everybody shares. It's like small town USA, but we're in the Andes Mountains. And what's important to know about that is there's a large extranjero presence here that is involved and interacts with the locals all the time, every day, daily, and they talk to each other, right? So from a reputation standpoint, if for example we took advantage of an Ecuadorian land seller and we robbed them, we stole we gave them an unfair deal, everybody in town would know about it, and every Ecuadorian in the area would learn about it, and they would never list their properties with us, they would never work with us, etc. So because things spread so quickly, your reputation matters maybe more than in the States here, because of the way the community is so close knit here, and there's such this familial tie and community tie that underpins the whole area. And we've talked about that in other videos about how important community and how much family values really I don't know what's the right word.
Yeah, they characterize like the values of the culture.
Right,
I mean,
right.
yeah.
So it's involved in everything, and the same here, right? If when people feel wrong, they tell everybody, and nobody, you'll stop getting business deals. People won't want to work with you. So it's really important that, over the years, looking through some history before I joined Abundant Living, I see all these different realtors that have come and gone over the last few years. You can see archived Facebook posts, you can see archived web pages that realtors have come and gone, and some are here and some are gone. And it just it's really a testament to what Jesse and the Abundant Living team have done over the years to still be here today. And that's because they do the right thing all the time. We make that a priority, and we take care of both sellers and buyers the best we can with the right intentions, and that's rewarded in us still being in business and rocking the community.
Yeah, and I want to touch briefly too on prices and sort of how we go about getting the best prices. So there's this idea, right, of gringo prices, and it exists. Like, I wouldn't say that that's a concept that that it has no basis in reality. That exists just like anywhere in the world. If you don't know prices, or you don't know what's going on, or you don't understand stuff, you can get ripped off, right? So there is some small percentage of local people here who would try to raise prices on whatever, on a stick of carrots, or a piece of property, or a car, or whatever the thing is, right, that you're at, service, based on them thinking, hey, this person might not know what this costs, and they might pay a little more, and that kind of thing, right? I wouldn't say, I don't know, I'd be curious your opinion, Carl, but like, I wouldn't say, if I had to characterize that, I'd probably say it's like a 70-30 split between people who would not do that and would, versus would, something like that. I don't know. What do you think? Is that?
Yeah, it's hard to know really, but yeah, I think you're probably right. Pretty close.
Yeah, but it's not everybody. It's not 80%. It's not. I don't even think it's 50%. But that exists, right? And so I think a lot of people, like, the amount of chatter I hear on social media about gringo prices, and oh, this is a gringo price, and all this stuff, and all these people who have never been here, or or whatever, right? But like, all the chatter you hear about that, it seems to be a big concern for people. And I get it. Like, you come down. I was a little bit like that at the beginning, right? You come down, you don't. It's hard to communicate. You don't know what stuff costs. You've seen all the movies. You've heard all the rumors. You're thinking you might be getting ripped off, and that kind of thing. And I gotta say, the first, when we opened in January of 2014. Most of our listings probably for the first year or two were overpriced, because we didn't know.
Right.
We didn't know the market. The market basically crashed at that time. We weren't selling anything, and people were like, "Oh, there's this new, really professional, this beautiful office. We look great. We had all the folders. We had all the, we did all the bells and whistles. Spent a lot of money, decorating and the whole night." And there's these foreign real estate guys this new show in town. There was very few real estate companies at that time in Loja. let's bring them all the stuff that is way overpriced, and maybe they'll sell it, right? And since we were still learning prices, we were still learning the market, which takes a long time. Like, there's no comps here, right? So you have to just be in it and learn what stuff costs by the area and by the characteristics. We didn't know. So the first 10 or 20 listings we took on were probably way overpriced, right? But as we went through, as we learned and got better and started to, be good at this over the course of time, obviously we learned prices, and then we figured out how do we get the best prices, from sellers, right? And so we've developed a process and a strategy over the years where we go through relationships for all of our listings, right? So some listings just come to us where, people know about us, we have a reputation, or they have a prior relationship with us, they're friends or acquaintances, and so they come to us with their properties. That's pretty common. Right. But outside of that, all of the listings that we're taking on are being taken on through relationships that we have, where we leverage locals who work with us to go in and do their best to get the best price, the agricultural price, for example, versus the development price or the and there is a little bit of an art form to that, right? And so we've really looked at over the years, okay, how can we get the best price? Who's good at that? Who can go into these places and talk to people and come out with a really a fair price, and not not anything that's exaggerated because you'll notice this too a lot with upper class Ecuadorians, right? They have a very hard time getting the same price at least quoted to them. They might get there at the end of the day, but quoted to them versus sort of a middle to lower class Ecuador, right? Someone who's farming, someone who's kind of looks that way, is from the area. If he goes and asks somebody what something costs, he could get a very different number than someone coming in a nice car with a nice shirt and a nice pair of pants from Loja and chatting about what that thing costs, right? So we'll send in strategically, right, the people who can talk to the people and talk to the locals in the way that works, and come out with the best number. Obviously, we also are working with the seller, so we're giving them our true assessment of what we think it's worth. Mm-hmm. We don't want to rip them off either, but in many times they have a pretty clear number in their head, and there's not a whole lot of, we can either list it or not. And if it's a good price, we will, and if it's not, in general, we'll avoid it unless there's some very compelling reason why to list it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point that you brought up about, no comps, because that's really important. Something that I've seen now, people will say, oh, that's overpriced, or that's underpriced, or that's cheap, or that's expensive. Or even on some of the YouTube comments, I'll see people say, oh, that's cheaper than land in yada yada in the US, or that's more expensive than this place in Florida, or that's more expensive than this place in Canada. Why would I do that? And what's interesting is that the local market, because there's no comps, there are things that can be overpriced in some places, mm-hmm. but it's really based on the attributes of the land. So some land may appear to be overpriced, but then when you get there and you see it, and it's like, oh, well, there's a spring that originates here, and there's two streams over here, and there's a fully mature orchard of fruit trees, and there's 70-year-old developed forest, and there's these things that it's hard coming from the West and the States. They're not, it's not like granite countertops or this brand refrigerator or this type of finishing. It's more like the natural attributes of the land. And that's hard to value, but because it's so subjective. Like, an owner of a property may say, hey, I'm bouncing the screen and Jesse's stopping me. An owner of a property may be like, hey, I baptized my children in this river and it's more valuable to me, things like that, where they're personal things and they have a value to somebody. And those are hard to budge. They're hard to negotiate. You're not negotiating somebody that has a feeling about it, but a lot of times you're seeing the attributes of the land that creates the value. And those are the things that a lot of people are looking for. And what's interesting also is the with the comp piece, right? So talk a little bit about the comps, because there's not public information on a lot of this stuff, and then the information that is public, talk about how that may or may not be accurate.
Yeah, so I'll touch on that in a second, but just in terms of what you're talking about too, the way that we value properties, right? So every area has a general price per square meter or price per hectare, depending on the size of the property you're talking about. And then there's the other characteristics, right? So if we're going in to look at a lot in Malacatos, right? That neighborhood that lot is in, everyone knows the price of property in that area. And then the only thing that's going to change what that costs is, is the road good or not? Is there electricity there or not? How flat is it? Is water hooked up or not? Is there any issues or any drainage issues or any land movement issues? Is there any issues? Like those things will adjust from there, but the neighborhood essentially has a price per square meter that everybody knows. Like that's not a difficult thing to ascertain. And then you're valuing in the rest of the stuff, right? So if it's got a house, you're putting a price per square meter on the house that we understand is what it's worth in the market. You're putting a price per square meter house. If there's a swimming pool, if there's other things on the property, you're adding that into the assessment, and you're coming up with a number or a relatively small range of what it's worth. So, and that's true of large properties too, right? And so a lot of times I think when people are looking online, they might not be familiar with all the areas. They're just looking at prices, right? They're just seeing like, there's some areas here that are.
I wanted to land. It's just fine. We have a butterfly visiting us. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's flying around here. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's like dragonfly and butterfly season right now. It seems like. I was laying on my roof deck here this morning, and I was really appreciating the fact that the sky is blue here for real.
Right.
I was talking to my dad back home the other day and looking at the sky on the video and seeing, what it was like back home. And this is actually blue. And I'm watching, I think they're actually vultures, but they're very beautiful, circling, in the air, and thousands of dragonflies. But anyways, so I don't remember, where was I at?
Mentioning that land prices are expensive in some areas.
So I think a lot of people online, they might just look at a price, see the price, and be like, oh, this is crazy, right? There are areas that are expensive. Like if you're in Quito, you're in Guayaquil, you're certain places on the coast, Vilcabamba, Malacatos. These are not comparatively extremely cheap areas. But then there's other areas that are extremely cheap, right? So if you're buying big properties that are further south or further east or further west of where we are, for example, they're very inexpensive comparatively, right? And so, a lot of what we list is in Vilcabamba because it's popular. It's Vilcabamba and Malacatos are popular valleys. The land prices here are driven by demand from Loja. So there's a city, and these are the sought after areas. These would be like the most sought after suburbs or like country areas, outside of a city. That's what Vilcabamba and Malacatos are. Then we list stuff in other areas where you're 2,000 to 5,000 a hectare for, big, large, beautiful properties that have all those streams and rivers and those kind of attributes. So, that stuff's just driven by area, right? So land as well has its metrics, right? In an area per hectare, more or less, what stuff is worth. You're factoring in the ancillary things like water, like infrastructure, if there's homes, if there's stables, if there's this or that, and you're coming up with a number that's a fair market price. So, that's kind of how we go about it.
That's interesting. The Lojano market, the Loja market does. I'd heard that it drives prices in Vilcabamba, and then I've now noticed it in real life because I see now I've met Lojanos that have summer homes or that have vacation homes, and you can just see by the traffic in town. I mean, from Friday to Sunday, the town square is double, triple, quadruple the normal amount of traffic. Yeah. People just hanging out, shopping in the stores, checking out the restaurants, having ice cream with their kids. It's literally every weekend. It's like 3 times the amount of people, and they're majority Lojanos, and they're here at their weekend homes and having their vacation homes.
Yeah. One thing I really want to add about land price, as you mentioned, Vilcabamba, Malacatos, Loja, price of property is higher in those areas. But comparatively to the States or the Western world in general, price of construction is significantly lower.
Great point.
Yeah.
So you pay more for the land because the land's in high demand, but building a house goes between $40 and $80 a square foot, right? 10 to 1, $400 to $800 a square meter, more or less. So you can build a beautiful, really well-built, solid house, way more solid than most homes in the U.S., with bricks and adobe and things and concrete for a fraction of the price. So, it balances itself. And property taxes here are extremely low. So you have, a lot less expenses yearly on your property. So it definitely balances it out. And then I was going to say too, just to, touch on what you both said about how subjective prices can be, because how do you put a price on a view like this, right?
Right.
How do you put a price on a stream or multiple sources of water or mature fruit trees, right? Privacy. How do you put a price on privacy? Like some people, that has a lot of value, but you can't really put a number on that, right? So every property is different. So prices can be subjective because certain areas are highly sought after because there's great water, because there's multiple sources of water in abundance, because there's more privacy, because there's more forested areas and all of the things we've spoken about.
Yeah.
So that's something to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, totally.
And I was going to say too, like, there's a huge difference too between buying 100 acres or buying half an acre or a tenth of an acre. Like smaller properties tend to be much higher per square meter price-wise than buying a huge chunk of land. So that if that's something that you're thinking about, prices are high for smaller lots, but maybe you get like some family members or a group of people to buy a piece of land together, and then you chop it up and subdivide it. You can get a much better deal for the same land. We sold a property like way out in Kinara, like up above Kinara. That was 2,000 hectares. I think it sold for 500,000.
Yeah, five something.
So that's $250 a hectare,
Right.
which would be $100 an acre. And that's like half an hour from here, right?
Yeah,
That was a massive property,
a lot of it was steep, but it was incredibly beautiful and large. Yeah.
So those properties still exist, but of course you have to buy a lot more land to be able to get those really low prices.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's 500 and maybe 30 hectares
For 500.
next to that, which is much more usable for around that same price right now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's nowhere different than anywhere you guys are from in the world.
Yeah.
Those are, in real estate anywhere in the world, the smaller the parcel, the more expensive per square meter in general. So that applies here, guys. So same thing. The bigger the property you get, the cheaper it is per square meter or square foot in general.
Yeah, and a property in a gated community is going to be more expensive, and a property in a luxury or high-end neighborhood is going to be more expensive. Closer to the town center is going to be more expensive per square foot.
Let's circle back to the public information, though, Jessica. I think that's important for people to understand, because the information that is public sometimes is not necessarily reliable. Why don't you explain why?
Yeah, so I don't know if there's a database kept of this or not. It doesn't matter, but to my knowledge, there's no public record of prices of closings of real estate transactions kept in Ecuador. So there is no database of that, to my knowledge. If there is a database, if the government keeps some database somewhere, it's not accurate, because it's customary here to put the lowest allowable amount on the title as the value of the sale. So the each municipio has their tax assessed value for properties, tends to be quite a bit lower than the market price, the market value of the properties. And the lowest allowable amount that the municipios will allow for you to declare the sale as is that tax assessed value. So the custom in Ecuador is that almost every transaction between Ecuadorians, they just put that number on it. So you could be buying literally a $500,000 property and you could write 130,000 on the sale. So because of that, there's no database of comps, right? So you can't get any reliable information at all on what something's worth. You literally have to go find out, like on the ground, or work with people that know. But there's no other way to do it.
Yeah, and the reason for that is to save on closing costs.
Save on
the transfer tax, which is the highest closing cost, and the lower amount you put on the sale contract, the less tax you pay for that. So people are wanting to save a little bit doing that, and it's very customary and not normal to do this here.
Yeah.
And I do believe they keep a database of it, because I think the Avalúo Comercial is based on that number. So like they keep track, and that's why they evaluate your property at a certain price, because of how much properties have sold in that area. Like on the
based on what people are declaring. Interesting. I don't know if
makes
that's
sense,
true or not.
it will always kind of correlate because everyone uses that number, right? So it keeps the prices aligned with the valuation.
Yeah, and that just illustrates how important the relationships and having that community matters, because there's no way to know. You could think something sold if you're coming here and you're trying to do it on your own, and you go to the notary, you go to the database and you say, oh, I'm interested in this property, I saw it for sale, I'm going to go try and do it on my own, I'm going to go look, oh, it's sold for 130, they're asking 400,000. Well, they bought it for 130, and then you already have this perception of mistrust. And then when you talk to your other and he tells you, well, actually, I didn't buy it for 130. I bought it for 290, 10 years ago. And then you're already feeling like, well, wait a second, it says 130.
We've lost deals like that.
Right.
We've lost deals like that where people thought they were getting ripped off because the custom here is to put the lowest amount. Right. And we have no idea what someone paid for it. But it's not going to be that for sure. Yeah.
Right.
No, that's a great point.
Same thing for vehicles here. And I think it's customary in the States to do that. Like I bought a pickup truck for around 20 grand. And I think it's evaluated on my matricula at like 4,500 or something like that, right? And that's because people always put the lowest amount they can to pay less transfer tax. Same thing for vehicles, just like properties.
And it's worth mentioning, closing costs here are not high. Like you're usually about 2 or 3% of the declared sale price. So that could be the real sale price or it could be less. But legally, you're supposed to declare the real sale price. Nobody does, but that's legally you're supposed to. But it's 2 to 3% normally is what it ends up coming out as. So it's certainly not super crazy. And Carl mentioned property taxes a minute ago. It's 1/10 of 1% of the assessed value annually. So you're paying on $1 million, you're paying $1,000. On 100,000, you're paying $100 a year in property taxes. So it's literally, it's literally almost a non-factor in your calculations for what you're doing.
In regard to closing, talk a little bit about, and I know things can extend closings and make them longer or shorter, etc. But if it's generally a clean closing, can you close faster or longer? What's the process?
In this canton in Loja, it's like 2 or 3 weeks usually. It depends how backed up they are. It can be faster, but it's usually not more than 3 weeks, unless there's stuff you have to work through. So. Cool. In other places, it can be faster. There's in really rural cantons, which we do business in. Sometimes we've gotten them done in 24 hours, several times. So,
Yeah, Loja takes a little longer than Zamora or Gonzanama, for example. And I just wanted to touch on the closing costs. It's customary in Ecuador for the buyers to pay the closing costs, and the closing costs are the property registry fee, the transfer tax, which is called alcabalas, and the notary fee. And that's about between 2 and 3%, like Jesse was mentioning.
And an attorney fee can be in there, and a few small ancillary paperwork costs. But that's essentially the biggest fee is the transfer tax, which is approximately 1.1% of the declared sale price, and that's why people make it lower to pay a little less on that. I want to unless you guys have other stuff on this topic, I want to talk a little bit about what's going on in Vilcabamba.
Sure. Before we do, guys, if you have any questions about real estate, our philosophy of doing business, technical questions on how processes work here, put the comments down below or reach out to us directly. But post your comments. If there's anything we didn't discuss about real estate transactions or our business philosophy that you'd like to understand or hear about, put the comments down below and we'll definitely address it on a future pod.
Awesome. Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about Vilcabamba because Carl's been here a year or two longer than me. I've been here since 2013, not in Vilcabamba the whole time, but I was always in Vilcabamba a lot, even when I wasn't living here. I am just so impressed by what's happening in this town. It's so cool, man. Like I can't tell you how nice it is to see how many awesome people and awesome young people. They're not actually young. I'm just getting older, so older is now young. But people in their 30s and 40s and 50s, and of course there's younger than that and older than that, which is great too. But people who are kind of family age, right, who parent age, the amount of friends, the amount of cool people with kids who run in their groups and do all theirs. It's just an awesome place to live. Like it has all the other stuff that we all know and we've talked about a million times, but but to see just what's happening in the community with the people, for me, it's so cool.
It is cool. And we have our Expat series, Expat Life Ecuador. We have some new episodes coming out that highlight a bunch of these families that have been here for extended periods of time, or some that are newer. But we're really going to show you the depth and breadth of the types of people that are here and the types of people that are relocating here with their families, where they're from all over the world, from the state, different states from Canada, from the Netherlands, we can go on and on, but there's a nice list in the pipeline. So stay tuned for those videos. They will be coming to you soon.
They're all I find that so many of the people, they have such depth to them. They're real people. You know, these are not like NPCs, right? These are not people just kind of, operating on some program or some set of beliefs, or these are real people that are really enjoyable to get to know and spend time with and interact with.
And the interviews are fun. Some of these videos we're having to cut short because I could talk to some of these people for hours and hours. We could have 2.5 hour feature film length, expat interviews that are interesting the whole time. At least they were for me. And, so I'm guessing if they're interesting to me and being newer here and understanding what drove people to come here and how they're operating their lives here, it'll be interesting to all you that are considering those same things from wherever you are in the world. So it's really been fun process.
Yeah, no, absolutely. One other thing too that when Brandon stops being afraid and we get to our I can't use foul language or anything that's gonna offend people. So that was the best I could come up with.
I almost used an F-bomb earlier. I don't know if you guys caught that, but I started the F and then stopped. So
right. Nice. So we're gonna start doing doing business and investing in Ecuador pod, which I'm really excited about. But along those lines, I think we get a lot of questions. Like, people worry about what will happen if, right? We get those questions a lot. What will happen if there's an issue in the debt markets, if the dollar has an issue, if there's supply chain issues globally, if all those kinds of what if questions that are on people's mind. And one of the things that is really interesting to me, and there's we could do a whole pod on that topic, but one of the things that's really interesting to me, right, is just how much less debt and less leverage is in the system here than it is in the U.S. and other places, right? So in the U.S., your typical consumer, right, your typical person has everything they own is leveraged. Their car, they're paying they got a note on their car, they got a mortgage on their house, they might have a second mortgage, they might have, all kinds of other financial instruments, connected to the mortgage. They're paying off student loan debt, they've got credit card debt, etc., right? And what that creates is a very tenuous situation where if things go wrong, if there are hiccups, if there is an issue in the debt market, you could have you could have large scale, forget collapse, but just large scale changes in asset prices, for example, right? So people here, right, they send their money to the U.S. often to invest in real estate because for safety purposes, right? Ecuadorians, yeah. So because the U.S. has been basically stable for 100 plus years, right? In people's minds, rightly so, it's a stable market. It's a place where you don't have to have the risk, of Latin America, right? Who's had all its ups and downs and collapses and dictators and various stuff in Latin America. So people here send their money there. But from my perspective, in the current environment, it's much safer here. It's a much safer investment if you're worrying about safety, right? Because here, if we had all that stuff, right? If the dollar had an issue, debt markets had an issue, supply chain, all those kinds of things took place, there's so little leverage in the system. There's so little debt in the system. You're not leveraged to financial instruments for the market to function. You're not leveraged to the debt market for the market to function. And the underlying value of the asset, which is stuff like you're seeing behind me, right? Like agricultural properties and water and minerals and gold and silver and copper and all that kind of stuff. That's going to maintain. People are still going to need to eat and build, and so on and so forth. So Yeah, it's interesting to me. Like, there's lots of other things, and you guys can touch on them if you want, as it relates to those kinds of questions. But just the leverage piece is really interesting to me, in terms of how it potentially could relate to value in different scenarios.
Yeah, I think that covered it, man. Yeah, it's really interesting because, even the day to day here, it is still kind of underpinned by a barter society. So should the currency collapse or whatever, lose value, people still do business by making trades every day. So it's not going to be a big change. And because of all the things Jesse just outlined in regard to leverage, most families aren't over leveraged. Most families own their home, or they have multiple generations within a home because it's so familial based, and they all have gardens and they all have chickens. I'm generally speaking, and they have cows and they have, they have goats or pigs, and
they tend to be pretty happy
and
as
they're
well.
right, and they're generally happy. So particularly in the more rural areas where we live. In the cities, they live like city people anywhere in the world, but some have gardens, some don't. Some have animals, some don't. But generally in this area, in these region where we live, most people live that way. So should there be some type of catastrophic event like that, it's not going to impact people in the same way here that it does anywhere in the world, because there are other places like this in the world, don't get me wrong, but particularly here, in regard to day-to-day changes in how you would live lifestyle, it wouldn't be a material change because of all the things we said, because it's not going to affect that, most families' ability to put food on the table because they produce a lot of it themselves. It's not going to impact people being able to pay their bills because a lot of their bills are already paid for. And then the things they don't have paid for, if there's no currency, they can trade eggs or produce or labor. And people make deals like that a lot of times, where it's really kind of refreshing that's kind of underpinning the community anyway. So should any of these crazy world nutso things happen, you're good. You can feel good in raising a family here because there's that support network that's kind of built into the community.
Yeah, on that note, Ecuador produces a ton of food.
Right.
It exports a lot of bananas, chocolate. It exports shrimp.
It's still an agrarian economy in many ways.
Right.
And so you drive on these rural roads, and it's just food growing everywhere, basically. Right. Yeah. And if food doesn't grow, there's animals usually on the mountains, right? Yep. There's cows and other things. So
it's still. I just sent my buddy some videos of. We're driving down the cobblestone road where the Taiwan noodle place is, dumpling and noodle place. We're driving down there, and all of a sudden I see a guy walking two bulls down the street. It's so great. Yeah, of course, right? You guys have been here for a decade. It's still beautiful. Like I said to my buddies, just a day in Vilcabamba. It's so great.
You being... Sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, it happens all the time. Right on this road up here, you got the cows coming up and down every day, twice a day. Yeah. You can't drive. You have to stop and wait for the whole herd of cows.
So awesome.
No, we were driving home last night, and there's just a horse by itself walking. Like, right. Okay, and you, because you've only been here a couple of years and you still notice these things, have made me notice them again and remember how interesting they are. But yeah, it's just par for the course here. There's one other thing I wanted to mention, if I can think of it. Oh yeah, the community thing, right? So if we're talking those kinds of scenarios, the communities here in the rural areas are so strong, right? They've known each other for generations. People move around here much less than other places, right? So families go back. Families have relationships with one another going back, in many cases, like many generations, right? So everybody knows each other. Everybody talks to each other. Everybody knows about each other. They help each other when they're in need, on and on, right? So if there are things where you need people to help you because of the situation in the world or however that looks, gosh, what a great culture to be in, for that kind of stuff, because it's just very tight knit, and it's very, they care about their communities and their neighbors and their families and all that stuff. So
it adds peace of mind for me and my family, moving here. That was a big part of the reason why we did relocate here, is that that peace of mind and that less stress, right? I think the region in general is less stressful, coming from the West or coming from a bigger city. And coming here, there's less stress, so you have more peace of mind. It's kind of different levels of that. So like you talked about Ishkaluma and the vibe there and the feeling, where we're holding our retreats. And they have a sign when you first walk onto the property that it says like entering a stress-free zone. Right. And the area in general feels that way. But then you walk into Ishkaluma and it's like a whole nother level of like, it just feels like, the stress is just melting off of you. So it's a really cool phenomenon.
I mean, yesterday morning when I finished my yoga class, I went to the river and jumped in this spot that's deep that has current and floated down a little bit in the sun. And I'm 3 minutes from home.
Right.
Like I walked out, got in the car, drove home, and got to work. Right.
Yeah.
It was like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. And I think some of that stress stuff too is because there's so much less debt in the system, there's so much less leverage, that takes the stress out of life.
Right.
Like it slows everything down. If you've got enormous amounts of debt in the system, everybody's scrambling to pay it all the time with everything they're doing, all their activities, and there's that weight and that burden and that stress of having to come up with all. Here you have some of that. It's not like nobody has loans, but the amount is reduced by multitude orders of magnitude. So I think that's part of it.
Yeah, totally.
Awesome.
Well, we got to wrap, guys. But before we go, I wanted to show you guys this. I'll see if I can get it in there. I got this. I don't know. You can see it. My big hairy beard here.
Is that your like Jurassic Park?
Yeah, I got this piece of amber from the Amazon jungle, and I gave it to a local artisan, and we'll give a shout out to Rilke and Facundo, and they made this macrame necklace for me, and they put it in there. It's the amber is really cool. It reminds me, if any of you guys watch the Netflix series, The Last Kingdom. And Uhtred, son of Uhtred, right. he has a sword, and he's got a piece of amber in his sword. So I found this piece of amber, and Facundo and Rilke,
you look like a Viking.
They put it in this really cool macrame necklace. So shout out to you guys. Thank you. Got some awesome artisans down here in Vilcabamba. Yep. They do amazing work at a very fair price. So cool, guys. It was a great pod, I think. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the information we shared with you. If you have any questions about things we talked about that you want further answers to, or things we didn't cover, put some comments down below, and we'll be sure to address those in the future. And definitely check out the links below if you're interested in the Vilcabamba Lifestyle Retreat. And if you're interested to learn more about the health retreat, put a comment down below and let us know, and we'll put you on a list to be able to share some of that information when we're ready to officially launch the content there.
Awesome. Thanks so much for tuning in. You guys hit the tagline. No, I still don't remember. So go.
We hope to see you here one day.
So until then,
see you next time.
We'll see you next time. Ciao, guys.